Why is the world suddenly worried about Somalia when for 2 decades everyone has been watching this nation disintegrate and lawlessness take over?
No, I think that the renewed commitment at this moment is coming particularly because of the global recognition that the insecurity in Somalia is not just a Somali issue, but it's becoming a global issue in the sense that its rippling effect on global economics, as well as the direct impact on global security. And the fact that if Somalia is allowed to remain what it is going to serve as a source of instability, not only to the country, but to the region, the continent, and to the globe in general.
Yeah.
And therefore, the renewed commitment in this particular context is coming because of the recognition that the issue has long ceased to be a solely Somali issue. It's now a global issue.
Yeah. What's your assessment in terms of the probable success of these talks? We've got some big hitters here. We've got the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. We've got the British Prime Minister. You've got the US Secretary of State. We've got Goodluck Jonathan also attending. How likely is it, do you think, that we'll get a solution coming out of here?
I think the conference does not set for itself to serve as a silver bullet to deal with the issue overnight. I think what it actually sets out to do is to try and galvanize international support and also try and coordinate international support in dealing with the situation on the ground. So within the context that it is trying to galvanize support and coordinate existing support, the conference will succeed a lot in bringing the Somali crisis once again into the limelight and in trying to whip up support from across the globe in dealing with the situation. The situation is more complex than what many people think, and therefore we should not expect a less than 24-hour meeting to offer solutions that can wholly address situations or complexities that have existed for more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
But in a more realistic sense, this conference is going to serve the most important purpose of bringing attention back to the situation and in trying to tell the Somalis and the people on the ground that, look, there's international renewed support for the situation, and that the international system now frowns upon any attempt to derail the ongoing peace process, and that the people of Somalia are not alone in this crisis.
Right. Now, but importantly, what about the Somalis themselves? Are they ready to sit down and make peace? We still have elements that are allying themselves to Al-Qaeda, and at the same time, we've got a government now that's backed by the African Union, and now, of course, we know that the Western powers are intervening because they are worried about piracy of the Horn of Africa.
The Somalis, after more than 2 decades of war, there's a high sense of war weariness on the ground. There are very many Somalis who feel that the country cannot continue that way and that it is time for them to be allowed to, showcase their entrepreneurial capacities to bring that country back to where it was before the start of the war. So there's that general commitment on the ground. And I also admit that there are other actors who are spoilers to the peace process, who are derailing the whole progress towards peace, the Al-Shabaab being one, and other armed groups on the ground. But generally what we realize is that at the moment, there is overwhelming support for peace on the ground vis-a-vis, the spoilers of peace, who are usually the ones who dictate the direction of the conflict.
Yeah.
But generally one can argue that the extent of war weariness on the ground is very high. People are fed up with the situations on the ground, and that is the more reasons why whenever the TFG forces and the African Union troops make incursions and liberate certain grounds or certain territories, they sometimes get overwhelming welcome by the residents of those places. Somalis are generally very entrepreneurial in their outlook, and very many of them feel it is time to go back home, develop their country, a place they can call their own, and go on with their lives in a normal context of peace. than what they are used to over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, so we've got this drive at the political level to try and get a solution. At the same time, we're also seeing a push on the ground militarily to try and get those who have taken up arms to agree to a peace process. How likely is that strategy going to succeed, do you think, given the events on the ground?
Now, at the moment, there's the recognition that, as I mentioned earlier, there's no silver bullet to the complex issues.
Yeah.
And therefore, we are increasingly seeing an emergence of a cocktail of interventions.
Yeah.
One at the political front, two at the security front.
Yeah.
And if you listen to some of the speeches that are emerging from the ongoing London conference, there's also the recognition that there's need for development as another paradigm for dealing with the situation on the ground. Now, a cocktail of these will give us an incremental contribution or progress towards peace. The issues are more complex, so we are not going to see a very sudden change. But the realistic changes and successes that have been chalked on the ground these days point to the fact that we are increasingly moving towards an incremental achievement of progress on the ground, which will overall, in the long term, lead to peace in Somalia.
Yeah, but Andrew,
but one can point to progress.
Andrew, you're speaking about a cocktail of interventions that we are seeing coming to place in Somalia here. But we are not seeing the AU, the African Union, officially represented in these talks. How can we have a solution made in Europe for Africa without the participation of the body that represents Africa as a continent?
No, I think at the moment we have some representation from the African Union. Remember that apart from the African Union, we have some key African states who are actors on the ground at the moment also represented. We have Kenya, we have Uganda, and quite a number of other African countries.
Yeah.
Now, then all the talks also are gearing towards pushing for support for the African Union troops on the ground. So we should also recognize the fact that these efforts are quite complementary to each other. We've seen the UN at the moment endorsing a boost in the strength of the African Union forces on the ground. So these are efforts that collectively will contribute. I feel that the efforts by the international community, as reflected at the UN level, as reflected also at the AU level, and even at the regional levels, are all parts of important processes that need to be coordinated to be able to realize the peace on the ground.
Yeah, Andrew, we have run out of time. If I had my way,
what I would propose
go on quickly.
Is that Somalis should be placed in the center of all initiatives that are emerging, and that the people be allowed, to come up with their own solutions to the issues on the ground because they understand it better.
Absolutely. And the point I was trying to make as well was that perhaps the AU should be the one taking the lead here in this conversation. But I guess we're going to be discussing this for a while now. That's Andrew Atta-Asamoah, Senior Researcher, Institute of Security Studies, talking about the Somali conference that's been taking place in the UK today. Hopefully there will be a solution found, or at least the start of one.